Hi, this is Ibadi NX from the Candid Frame, and Happy New Year. I'm looking forward to the offerings that we're going to provide to you guys on the Candid Frame podcast in 2015, as well as on this YouTube channel. So stay tuned for some really exciting new offerings in the coming year. But today I wanted to give you guys a really short video about street photography and being aware of light. It's something that I really pay a lot of attention to when I'm out on the street. When people are initially going out to do street photography, they're often looking for, people to shoot or different things, and it can create a lot of anxiety because, a lot of people are intimidated about photographing people. But one of the things that I tell people to look for is look for light first before you look for anything else. Find the setting first, because sometimes you can find the setting, you can find great light, and then you can just wait for something to happen. Allow your subject to actually walk into the frame. And that's one of the things that I wanted to show you in several of the images that I've chosen for this video. So let's get started. So here's a shot by Simon Husain. He shot this with a Canon EOS 550D at 18 millimeters and an exposure of 1,000th of a second at f8 at ISO 400. And he uses the light beautifully here in this street scene. And this is something that I will often do when I want to photograph people who are walking down the street, for example. I will find a spot where there's a shaft of light that is hitting the scene. Especially, I want to have like the presence of shadow here. I want to create a scene with high contrast. So I'm looking for a shaft of light into which my subjects will actually walk into. So I would find a scene just like this, and I would set my exposure so that it's biased for the highlights, because I don't want to blow out the highlights to favor the shadows. If you take a look at any of my images on my website at barrynx.net, you'll see that I use a lot of high contrast lighting, whether I'm shooting color or whether I'm shooting black and white. And I'll make sure that my exposure doesn't blow out the highlights. And then also I'm going to be using a fairly moderate to small aperture, like f8, maybe even smaller, because I want to have enough depth of field, because as my subject walks into the frame or into the spot where I anticipate I'm going to make a photograph, I want to have enough depth of field so if I miss focus, I'll still have enough depth of field to keep the subject relatively sharp. And Husain does both of those things here. And one of the great things about finding the light and finding the scene first is that you don't have to be preoccupied with finding the perfect subject. What you can do is just stand there in place and just allow people to walk into the frame. One of the things that's also happening here is that you'll see that there's another photographer whose name eludes me, unfortunately, talks about choke points. There can be pathways in which subjects are forced to move through. You have the storefronts here in the back, you have some figures here, and these people have to walk right in this path, which is ideal because you want them walking into the light. Sometimes if the pathway is too wide, what can happen is if they see you with the camera, they're going to walk around you. And I want to choose a situation where I know my subjects are going to be forced to walk into the light. And if I'm concerned with focus at all, what I can do is I can pre-focus on the spot where I anticipate my subjects are going to be. I can either do that manually by manually focusing, or I can simply use my autofocus and tilt my camera down, focus on the spot where I anticipate they're going to be, lock the focus, and then recompose and then make the photograph. And at that point, all I do is I just stand there, and as different people walk into the frame, I just make my shots. And because they see me standing there with the camera pointed in their direction, they don't necessarily think that I'm taking a photograph of them. They're thinking I'm taking a photograph of something else, the things that are behind them, the storefront. But I'm really taking a picture of them. But because they see me standing there already with the camera in place, they just walk into my frame and I just start taking my photographs. And with a scene like this, I'll just allow numerous people, and I'll stand there for 20-30 minutes until I feel I've gotten something. And Simon here does just a great job here with the light, the contrast, the focus is spot on, and he's got great characters walking into the frame. And I just love this shot, and it really takes advantage of using that technique to make a really good photograph on the street. Here's another shot here by Faisal bin Rahman Shuvo. He was shooting with a Fujifilm X-E1 Shutter speed was 1/1200th of a second at f8 at ISO 1600. So here you would think, oh, he's outdoors in a bright, sunny situation. Why is he using a high ISO like that? Well, one of the key reasons is because you want to use a fast shutter speed to freeze the action of the people moving within the frame, but you also want to maintain a really relatively small aperture to maximize your depth of field. So I won't hesitate to increase my ISO in order to achieve both the fast shutter speed as well as the moderate aperture to maintain that depth of field, but a shutter speed that's fast enough to freeze the subject. And again, here you're dealing with the street scene, but look at the quality of the light first and foremost. That is what makes this shot so interesting. To begin with, is the quality of the light. And then when you have subjects that come into the frame that are interesting, it helps to accentuate those qualities. And here you've got this figure with this white hat on that's really, really interesting. You got this color contrast that's happening with the white, the sort of brownish golden color of his skin, the yellow scarf, the woman in the red with the red and the blue and the aqua, and you have all these interesting things that are happening. Imagine if this was just shot with just an overall flat light. You still might have some of the interesting elements here in terms of color contrast, but it doesn't necessarily mean it wouldn't be as good of a shot or as interesting of a shot because you have the quality of the light. There's certain things I don't like here. I mean, I don't like having this guy here with the white shirt with the stripes. It's a big distraction. If you look at some of the earlier videos that I've done about the 5 visual draws, you can see why this brightness and this pattern sort of take away from this element here. But nevertheless, take a look at what, Faisal does here in terms of being aware of the quality of the light, contrast, before he even makes the shot. He must have seen the light here and wanted to take advantage of it. And it helps to bring attention to the subject, but it helps to produce a more interesting overall composition. Now here's a shot here by Juan Maria Rodriguez. I don't have any XF information on here, but it was shot in Seville, Spain, where the street performer was performing. And you can imagine there would be a lot of people photographing the same scene. You can see some people here with their smartphones making photographs. But what Juan does here excellently is that he chose a position that allowed him to take advantage of the bright light happening here that helps to basically silhouette the subject as he performs. A lot of the people here were probably shooting, from here, and they didn't have the benefit of this light. So he would probably have been illuminated by just this even sort of flat lighting. And I can promise you that their shots probably are not as interesting as this is, because Juan here positioned himself to take advantage of this great quality of light, this sunlight that's hitting this building over here. And it helps bring our attention here. I mean, you look at all the light over here. It's all flat. There's very little contrast. There's very little detail. But by just positioning himself to see the light first and foremost, he was able to choose a camera position that made all the difference. And all he had to do there was just, carefully frame his composition so that he could get the form of the figure here, of the person here, and to really clearly define their limbs so have a sense of what the person is doing. This and all the other examples that I've shown you are opportunities where you just don't make just one shot. You find the light, you find the setting, and then you have to just keep making photographs, because if you only shoot once, that one shot probably is not going to nail it. For me, if I was shooting this, I would probably just park myself there and make 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 photographs, hoping that just one of them is perfect. When you have something as good as this, don't make the mistake of only taking 1 or 2 snaps and then walking away thinking you're going to get something better. This is probably going to be the best lighting situation of the day, and so you want to make the most of it. So that's it for today. Just wanted to do a short video here. If you have not been contributing to the Flickr pool, all you need to do is ask. Just visit the Candid Frame Flickr pool on Flickr, and I'll be more than glad to add you. There are no pre-qualifications necessary at all. And if you're finding us for the first time on this YouTube channel, there is a podcast called The Candid Frame, which you can find at thecandidframe.com, where you can actually listen to conversations with some of the world's best photographers, both masters and people who are up and coming. And you can find that at thecandidframe.com. So thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time.